Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, and welcome to Building a Strong Support System. My name is Michelle Eisenberg, and I am a program assistant here at the NASDAQ Entrepreneurial Center. And for those of you who may not know, the NASDAQ Center is a nonprofit building a better path for entrepreneurs worldwide by improving inclusion, access, and knowledge in entrepreneurship. So, as you will see in the chat in a moment, the NASDAQ Center provides programs, resources, and exceptional mentorship to entrepreneurs across all races, industries, and geographies. So, definitely make sure to check out those links and resources in the chat. And then just a couple of housekeeping items before we get started. First, let us know where you are dialing in from in the chat. We always love to connect. And second, we are going to open up for live Q&A at the end of the event. So please make sure to submit your questions for us in that Q&A function at the bottom of your screen throughout the presentation. And we will try our best to get to all of them. And of course, none of what we do could be possible at the center without all of the amazing support from our sponsors, including NASDAQ, Lehigh University, BMO, Airbnb, KPMG, Wilson Sonsini, Microsoft Entrepreneurship for Positive Impact, BPM, and HubSpot for Startups. We are humbled by their contributions and hope you are grateful too. And so before we get started, we always like to launch a couple polls to step back, see how everyone in the room is doing today. This first one is going to ask, how are you feeling? Fearful, anxious, surviving, or optimistic? And I'll give it just a couple moments here. Thank you, thank you. All right. Give it one more moment. Awesome. All right, I'm going to end this poll and share these results. Awesome. Looks like optimism's in the lead. Always love to see that, but definitely have some feelings of anxiety and surviving in the audience. I'm super confident our conversation today will be helpful in those areas. So I'm going to stop sharing this poll and launch that second one. What is keeping you up at night? Finance, sales, marketing, scale, pivot, team, or surviving? And this one just tells us a little bit more about your current entrepreneurial needs so we can make sure the programs and resources we are developing are meaningful for all of you. Awesome. We got folks from DC, Georgia, New York, West Virginia, Arizona, Texas, lots of folks from Texas. Awesome. Welcome, welcome, everyone. So great to have you all here today with us. Awesome. All right, I'm going to end this poll. Give it one more moment. All right, ending this poll and sharing the results. All right, it looks like we got sales coming up in the lead, finance and marketing right behind, but we got needs all across the board. So thank you all for participating. Super helpful. Gonna stop sharing this poll, and without any further delay, please join me in giving the warmest welcome to our special guest, Kelly Lynn Adams, Master Certified Trauma-Informed Business, Leadership, and Life Coach, international speaker, podcaster, and writer. Kelly, it is such a pleasure to have you back, and I'm super excited for this conversation today.
Thank you, Michelle, for having me back. Yeah, I'm super excited for this conversation as well.
Awesome. So yeah, we're here to talk about support systems. And just before we jump right into the conversation, for those who don't know you, can you maybe give like 30 seconds on who are you?
Sure. Yeah. So I started on Wall Street and then climbed the corporate ladder for 20 plus years. I was doing finance strategy and HR for some of the biggest world's retail and fashion luxury brands. And, support has been very critical throughout my journey. So I love talking about this because I wouldn't be where I am if I didn't lean on support and I wasn't proactive. If I wasn't proactive in getting the support I needed, I would not be where I am today. So I'm super excited about this topic.
Totally. Yeah. Yep. Super important. And I think every entrepreneur can relate to that to some degree, leaning on some kind of support system, as they're moving through their business journey or, figuring out how to build that support system, which hopefully we can, provide some guidance there today. So just to get us started, I think the first question a lot of entrepreneurs have is like, I don't really know exactly where I need support. So I think just to start us off, as entrepreneurs are kind of initially thinking about, building support systems for their entrepreneurial journey, how might they assess their strengths and weaknesses, and, maybe other aspects of the business to kind of determine where support is most needed for development?
Yeah, this is a great question. And this can happen at every level. So, whether you're just starting out or even if you're in business, right, 3, 5 years, this has happened across my journey when I was still in corporate doing the side hustle thing. And then when I left corporate and became full time entrepreneur, and even now, right? So, the number one thing I would say is create space and time to reflect, to
Mm.
say, okay, what am I good at? What is not my zone of genius, I call it, and see where would you want help or where do you need help, because in the beginning sometimes we're bootstrapping it all, right? And it's like, oh, we got to do everything, we're bootstrapping it. And sometimes, for me, I know in my journey I waited way too long to get help because I was like, oh, I can do it all. I don't, I might have not had the funds, and I just didn't ask for help very, in the beginning. And I was like, you know what? Like, this is not this is not conducive. It's not sustainable. So I would say take some time, create some space, and really get and recognize and get honest with yourself. Like, where do you need support? Where are the things that you're really good at? Where are the things that you're not so good at? What is like, oh, this is my zone of genius? And then it's like, okay, assessing where can I get help? And it doesn't have to be. Sometimes you can get interns, right? Sometimes you can get help that is not, doesn't have to cost a lot. So it's very, very important though to recognize where those aspects are. And I think a lot of people just jump in and do it all and think they can do it all, and they just don't give themselves the space and the grace.
Mm. Absolutely. I think that's so real and something that, a lot of our entrepreneurs can probably see themselves in that experience. And then just a quick follow-up, because I think, even once needs are kind of identified, it can be difficult to kind of like know where to go from there. So I think, especially in the case where, we have early stage entrepreneurs who are um, may need support in several areas of the business and as a leader, how might they think about kind of like, prioritizing, addressing those needs?
Yeah. It's definitely good to see, okay, what is your solid foundations and to build from that point. I will also say, though, it is looking at what is going to move the needle the quickest,
Mm.
right? So sometimes it's like, okay, I remember when I didn't really have my website all up and running when I was really getting into business. And I could have had the website and could have concentrated on that, but I didn't. I was like, what's going to move the needle quicker? Right. And it was, for me, it was getting clients, getting into conversations, being at networking events, seeing where the opportunity was for my service-based business. So when I say move the needle, it's like, what is going to move the needle the quickest in your business to really generate that income? And sometimes the things that we think that we need aren't really necessary at that moment if you were to kind of rank them. So I think people think they need to have all the systems, all the webs, everything set up. And it's like, that's not true sometimes, right? So it's just taking a step back, and everyone's situation is going to be different. And I'm a big believer in creating a solid foundation. And sometimes it's, you know what, the quickest way to move the needle is to get into action and say, okay, what's going to be the revenue? I call it income producing activities. Like, what are those activities to then build like a website or something like that?
Yeah, absolutely. I love kind of looking at it through the lens of like, what is really going to have the most impact for my business? Where could I really like, you know, grow the the most efficiently, and I think, yeah, that when evaluating it through that lens, you can realize like, okay, maybe I can put this on the back burner for now, and this other thing is what's really going to push my business to the next level. Uh,
Mhm.
I think that's awesome. So, and you mentioned something that I think is so important, which is that like sometimes entrepreneurs don't necessarily know that they or realize that they need, these kind of systems of support surrounding them as they move through the entrepreneurial journey. And so, sometimes that can be through, because, fear of vulnerability or belief that they have to do everything by themselves. Whatever the case may be, how can entrepreneurs kind of begin to shift their mindset to overcome these kinds of mental barriers and embrace the idea that of seeking support, for personal growth?
Yeah, it's totally a mindset thing. And what I like to say is surround yourself with other people, right? Other people that are either in the same area as you, further along than you, couple steps ahead, and even like the mentorship. So you want to be surrounded by environment because what that does, it shifts. It shifts your mindset. It shifts the way you see things. It shifts perceptions. It's so important. I love this analogy of when you plant a seed in a pot, the seed can only grow, or the plant can only grow, or the vegetable as big as the pot is. So you constantly want to be, placing yourself in bigger pots or bigger rooms around other people because that is an instant mindset shift. And it's like, oh, if you're seeing people that are doing bigger things or shifting the perception of, oh, I didn't know that was possible. How are you doing that? It's an automatic, right? And we can talk about shifting mindset and shifting perception. I think the quickest way is to get around other people and to get into different environments and seeing what are other people doing? What's working here? What's not working there? Because that's the quickest, easiest, shortest way to cut through all the noise. And yes, everyone's experience and perceptions are different, but it will definitely shift the mindset and the vision of, oh, seeing what actually is possible. So I love that you bring up the mindset piece because listen, we can do all the affirmations, we can actually embody it, we can do all of those things. And it's super, super important to have those people around us. And sometimes they're people that you don't even know, right? Sometimes it's like, oh, I'm just meeting you now, and you just gave me a spark of idea or an aha moment that I didn't even think about that. So I
Right.
think it's super important to get into physical rooms and virtual rooms and even just one conversation, Michelle, right? Like one conversation could lead to one client, to lead to one opportunity. And people, I think, don't think about, wow, the power of one. And so I always like to say to people, like, it only takes one. Like there's such a power in the power of one.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I think that's so important no matter kind of what you're doing with your business, the industry stage of business you find yourself in, surrounding yourself both with, people who are kind of like, going through a similar journey as you, as well as people who have, have different experiences. Like both of those perspectives can be valuable, like when you're kind of hearing it from another person. And yeah, you can kind of only gain those perspectives by putting yourself out there or joining, these kinds of community convenings or whatever way, it feels right to kind of engage with those communities. But yeah, I think that's such a great point to emphasize, just, how being surrounded by other perspectives really can, not just provide you with the support you need, but help you grow in areas that you maybe didn't even realize, didn't even think about. So I love that. And kind of going right off of that, just when thinking about kind of putting yourself out there in these kinds of whether it's in person or on Zoom, whatever it may be, what kinds of strategies have you found most effective in kind of like engaging with, diverse groups of people, whether they be mentors or peers? potential investors, whatever it may be. Um, Kind of like optimizing that communication strategy for to inform their continued learning and growth.
Yeah, I would say one, be intentional. So always say, okay, what am I going to this event or this group of people? What is my intention? What do I want to? And I always like the give and the get. What can I actually give and contribute to this room or this group or this person? And sometimes people are like, well, I have no idea. I don't know. And maybe they're smarter, or maybe they view them as smarter or better than. And that's not true, because everyone has a zone of genius or something that they can contribute, a thought, an idea. So it's getting intentional of, okay, what can I give first to this, room, person, event? And then what do I want to ask for? And I know we were talking about this, Michelle, a little bit earlier, is like the ask, right? Making the ask. So many people do not make the ask, especially, and myself included at times. It's like, oh, it's vulnerable to ask for support. It's vulnerable to say, I need this, or I need help with this. And some people, right, they want to look like they have it all together. But everyone needs support, right? Everyone has an ask. And so when we get to flex that muscle of having the ask is so important. So I would say being intentional, seeing what you can give, what you can get is really making the ask. And then just really being curious, like ending on the curiosity of being like, oh, I'm so curious. If you don't know something, if something doesn't make sense, and just staying curious within an event, within a person, it can just open up the doors. In coaching, they have this it's called thinking partners, and when it's a strategy of allowing the person to speak for like 45 minutes, an hour straight, and you only get to ask as the coach two questions.
Oh, wow.
This is work by Nancy Klein. And so you ask the two questions, and these people just like, they just talk and they talk and so it's staying curious, and you're only asking two questions, but you're staying curious within hearing and listening to the other person. So I think a lot of people, that you can get more when you stay curious and ask more questions, because people love to talk about themselves. So even if you're nervous about making the ask, right, have everyone like talk about themselves, talk about their journey, learn, stay curious. So those are a little bit of the strategies. And listen, it's nothing new. However, I would invite and challenge people to really put this into action, right? The next thing you go to, the next person you meet, the next in-person or online event that you go to, where can you either do all four of these things or just one and put it into action?
Huh. Absolutely love it. And yeah, I think that's so real in the sense that, maybe you do have an ask in mind, but it can be hard to actually, step up and say that to the person that you're trying to connect with. But I love this mentality of, paying it forward, and if everyone kind of plays their little part in paying it forward, then there will be a community in which everyone is kind of showing that they are willing to, like, help others, and they're there to support the other, community members around them. And so I think that's just so important when it comes to entrepreneurship. Um, and so, I quickly mentioned mentorship earlier, but I wanted to dive a little bit deeper, because I think mentorship is such a critical part of, the support systems that entrepreneurs build for themselves. But it can have, entrepreneurs have different experiences with mentorship, some, in terms of commitment or expectations. And so when entrepreneurs are kind of navigating these dynamics, how can they ensure that uh, the time spent with mentors is meaningful as it relates to their personal and professional development?
Yeah, great question. And it is, right? Because it's kind of wobbly in a sense of like, I'm looking for you to give me all of your wisdom, right? And I want to hear all your stories. And that's great. And I think there's so much potential in that. And again, going back to intentionality, it's like, okay, what do you want to actually gain from this person or this experience? However, it's also putting in agreements, right? Of being like, okay, what do I want to gain? But also, if it is a mentorship relationship, it's like, okay, let's set agreements of how's this going to look? What do I want to get? What do I want to give? Right? Because you could also give something to the mentee mentor relationship. So it's also, I love agreements because it's setting the foundation and setting the stage of saying, okay, even to the logistics of how many times are we going to meet? How long are we going to talk? What are we going to talk about? And I like to look at mentorship also as, I don't know if a lot of people have done internships, right? I did tons of internships, and even now when when I'm the mentee or the mentor, when I'm in the mentee, it's like, okay, what do I want to learn from this person? And it's saying, okay, setting that foundation of the agreements of, okay, what can I get out of it? And then you doing the work, right? Like you providing, kind of like an intern, you setting the stage of, okay, this is what I want to get out of the relationship. This is what I'm willing to do. And you set the standards, run it by the mentor, see what their feedback is, and then come to an agreement. And I think a lot of people, even in relationships, right, the agreements is so powerful. And I think people forget to have those. And it's really just commitments that you're making to each other and just talking things out and seeing where in the middle can we meet. And I think that's so important in a mentor mentee relationship. And then on the other side, the mentor, it's the same thing. It's like looking at the boundaries, right? How much are you giving? How much are you willing to give? Because I know as a mentor, I'm like always like, I want to give you everything, but it's like, okay, at what cost, right? At what expense? So I think the agreements and the intentionality and laying the foundation is so critical because it just makes it so clear, clean, and cut, right? Like bottom line, this is what we're going to work towards, but then having that conversation together, as a partnership. So I have seen that work really well. And then again, also asking like to your mentor is like, who else could I meet, or what would you suggest? Or again, staying curious, going back to the curiosity of it. So I don't know if that answers your question, but I think the agreements is really, really important, as well as the intentionality.
Yeah, absolutely. That's super helpful. And I think just like thinking kind of I know a lot of entrepreneurs are, interested in kind of building long-term relationships with mentors. I guess from a mentor's perspective, what are some of the most common like pitfalls you see entrepreneurs kind of making in terms of just um the way they build, support systems around themselves or, just take care of themselves? What are kind of the most common pitfalls you see?
Definitely no boundaries, right? And then building a business, it's like you're doing all the things. So it's and we'll bring the self-care piece into this and the mental health and all of that. Because if you're working and you're doing all the things and you're not asking for support, or even if you have support, you really get to prioritize the self-care and the boundaries and the mental health. What I also see the pitfalls is also not being clear. Like, oh, yes, I need the support, I need the help, but I need it everywhere. And like, I don't know. I'm just like, I need help everywhere. So it's like being intentional, again, being direct, being focused. And even if it's like, I need help everywhere, it's like, take a segment and start there. Cause it's like, we can't like, I forget the phrase, but doing everything at once, it's like, you're not going to get anywhere. It's like, take one thing and focus on it. So I see a lot of people, just because they have a mentorship or or mentee or mentor relationship, it's, oh, help me with everything. And it's like not clear, concise. I also see the pitfalls, again, back to self-care, the burnout, the thinking that they have to do and be everything by a certain amount of time, or they're comparing themselves to other people starting businesses at the same time. Like, oh, well, this person is ahead of me. And what I will say about community and even just relationship building, you can cut your time in half, right? When you are in the right communities, when you are surrounded by people, because you're just learning at an elevated, escalated level that you can really, I mean, yes, fail fast, fail forward, but you can cut a lot of that in half when you are around a community. When someone's like, oh, I did that, and this is what happened for me. Now, you don't have to take all of the advice, but you're getting, again, another clear perspective of, oh, okay, that's something I need to watch out for, look out for, be kind of aware of. So I think it's the pitfalls is also too is not asking for the help, not getting the support, not being in community, not being vulnerable to ask, hey, like I need help with this, even though if you are, very successful. I see a lot of this with some of my clients coming at very successful coming out of corporate. They're starting or they have the side hustle and they're starting the business, but it's like, well, I don't know. Like, do I ask? Because they should be at a certain level, but it's like you're building something totally new. Yes, you can use all your skills and expertise and wisdom, but there's no shame in asking for support. And I think when you're in communities, it's utilizing those people and the processes and the resources to your advantage, like really taking advantage of like everything and everyone that's available, not taking advantage of people, but really, being learning, like a growth mindset in a
Mhm.
sense.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, we've definitely heard entrepreneurs, express almost all of those concerns that you just listed, at some point in their entrepreneurial journey. And so that's so real. And I think, a word that we hear a lot nowadays, in the entrepreneurial landscape is resilience. And I wonder, just what does that word mean to you, as it relates to, leading a business to success? And how can entrepreneurs kind of begin to shift their mindset away from those types of thoughts that you just talked about, towards a more resilient mindset where they can, effectively navigate setbacks or challenges that they'll face?
Yeah. So when we talk about resilience, two words come to mind, and I love this because they're total opposites. It's grit and grace, right? So
Yeah.
grit being, okay, getting into action. Because I know for me and a lot of people in my world, sometimes we're overthinkers and we can get in our head and the mindset, we can go down the rabbit hole of looking at the worst case scenario, like the what if. But we can also spiral up and say, what if? Like spiral up instead of spiral down. And what is really great with resistance is when you move, when you make even the slightest movement, you take the action, you send the email, you talk to the person, you reach out to a friend, whatever it is, that action creates momentum. Then it's like, oh, okay, that wasn't that bad. I'm going to take another action, or maybe I don't.
Mhm.
However, that's the grittiness of it. And I always love this phrase for myself personally. It's like, I didn't come this far to only come this far. When you're in those tough moments, you're like, okay, I didn't come this far to only come this far. So it's like that sometimes also motivates me personally. And it's like, okay, this is what this is just what is present in the moment. When I say grace, it is because we can also get into that momentum, the movement, the hustle culture, all of that, right? And that's where the burnout happens. That's where, the self-inflicted pressure comes. So when I say grace, it's okay, can I actually go take a walk? Can I actually take care of myself? Uh, is the business going to burn down because I took a 5-minute walk or because I took a few days off? No. And if it does, okay, we'll build it again, right? That you go back to the grit. So it's also allowing yourself to have the mental space, right? To have the self-care. A lot of people are not giving themselves mental clarity, mental space. And that's where we're seeing like everything's moving so fast, social media, all the like AI, all these things. And it's like, okay, sometimes we just need room to breathe. Right. So, and this is where also the strategic, it's like working in the business, which is like the grit, working on the business, which is more of like giving the space, I have something called CEO days, right? Where I'm actually, me and my team are looking on the business, like what strategically, what are we doing? Because we need time also to take a step away from the business and for that self-care. Because if you think about it, right, whenever you go on vacation or maybe like you're in the shower, your brain is like, maybe it's going a million miles an hour, but when you're in a relaxed state, sometimes this is what occurs for me. I don't know if it occurs for anyone else. you get these like aha moments, or you get a download, or you're like, or you get a creative idea and you're like, oh my gosh, where did that come from? Oh, it's because I'm in a relaxed state. And it's like, oh, now it could also come in other areas. But that's what I like to say when we talk about resistance, because I think it's a combination of both. And being an entrepreneur, being a business owner, it is, right? It's demanding, it's different, it's different things that we get to, really experience. And with the grit and the grace, I love it because it's like, okay, well, we can be in the action and the doing, and then also we can be in the being of it. And both are required, in my opinion.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And I think what you're saying is so important to emphasize. I know we have a lot of entrepreneurs who are really early in that business journey. They're wearing every hat, and it can feel like a difficult decision to take time to yourself when you have this whole business to think about. And so just staying on this point for a moment, can you maybe talk a little bit about some of the strategies that entrepreneurs can implement to begin to more effectively manage their time and commitments and maintain a sustainable work-life balance?
Yeah, so there's a couple of things that I think are helpful. Some of you may already be doing it. One is like looking at your calendar, right? If you were to look at your calendar right now, like how do you find it to be productive for you, right? Some people color code, some people do every 30 minutes, some people do time blocking, where you time block a chunk, amount of time for a certain activity or action. So it's looking at your calendar and just getting really honest with yourself. Like, what do you want it to look like? Sometimes you can do a time audit, right? Where you take the next 7 days and no shame, no judgment, just write down exactly what you're doing every single like 30 minutes or hour. It may take a minute or two, but like you'll find, right? Oh, I'm on social media for, 3 hours a day, right? And it's okay, right? To just get accurate of where you are. Because a lot of people don't get accurate. They're like, why do I feel like I have no time? Oh, but I'm on TikTok, or I'm on I'm on these social media apps so long. So it's okay, getting accurate of where you are, and then how do you want the schedule or your calendar to change? So it's looking at that with no judgment. And you might be like, oh, well, I don't want anything to change. Maybe I just want to tweak something here, or maybe I want to get up earlier, maybe I want to stay up later. So it's just getting accurate, and then creation, like how do you want to create it? The second thing I will say is, I did not do this, and I would say hire before you're ready. And what I mean by that, and it doesn't have to be like, some people might not have, right, the funds to do it. You could do interns, right? You can have interns. Getting help before you actually need it. And it only has to be, say, one thing. I actually did this with my cleaning lady. I was like, you know what would it be like to have someone that would come in to my place, clean? And I actually did this. I'm like, I did an experiment. Okay. It took her 3 hours to clean. I did some work. I went outside and I was like, oh, that's actually worth it. I got a lot done. And I actually had time for myself within those 3 hours. So, really looking at, okay, what are the sections in your life or in your business that maybe even one or two tasks that you can outsource? And maybe it is to an intern, or maybe it is to someone that can actually help you. And I think people get scared a lot, but it's like, well, you'll take off even faster, right? With the right help that is there. So that is for your consideration too, because I think a lot of people wait until they earn a certain amount of income or revenue until they hire. So, but I would really invite people to see where the pockets in your life that you can outsource and delegate. Maybe it isn't an assistant, maybe it's somewhere else, right? And then the third thing I would say is, really taking time to yourself. I mean, I know it's not like this like sexy strategy. It is sexy when you're doing it. Right? It's like, oh, but you are your own best asset. So what that means, and when I say taking care of yourself, that does mean self-care, but it also means surround yourself by the right people, surrounding yourself with the things that you're listening to, the things that you're watching, the things that, right? Because everything that you consume on every single level is affecting you. It's like, okay, what do you want to cause and create in your life? And so we just have to look at okay, well, if it's crap in, it's crap out, right? So it's what are we, feeding ourselves? Are we drinking water? Like even to that, like on all levels of consumption. And I think as entrepreneurs, like, we can get in the habit of working so hard and working so much sometimes. And it's like, let's take a step back and see where we can make even the 1 or 2% shifts. It could be like, oh my gosh, I'm eating right every 3 hours, or I'm drinking, X amount of glasses of water. I know in some cases when I was first starting out, I would forget to eat, I forget to drink water. I know it sounds silly, but it was just meeting after meeting, and I didn't carve out the time for that. So
Yeah, no, I think you bring up a lot of great points there, and yeah, like I love kind of like the examples you give, and just recognizing that yes, it can feel really difficult to take that time to yourself, but just recognizing how critical it is, absolutely. Um, and so thinking about kind of how support systems play into this, what self-care, practices, kind of like going a little bit more in depth, would you recommend kind of thinking about self-care through a mental, emotional, and physical lens? And where do kind of the entrepreneurial support systems play into this kind of self-care?
yeah, so I would say from mental and emotional, it is finding community, right? Where we get to, it could be a couple of communities, it could be uh, kind of like the 5 people that you hang around the most or talk to the most. It could be mentorship. It could be getting into masterminds, groups, um, programs that you offer, right? Like it's so critical because you're not alone. When you're in that dynamic, it's like, oh, I'm not alone. Oh, other people are dealing with this. Oh, there's other possibilities I can see. It is so important because even like loneliness, right? We're more connected than ever, yet why do a lot of people feel more alone than ever, right? So community is so important. So getting into masterminds, like groups, networking opportunities, just even connecting. And this is what I like to say too, Michelle. It's like the whole, a connection begets another connection. Money begets money, right? PR or press begets more PR or press. So the more you're like, not, and listen, if you identify as an introvert or extrovert, it can only, again, back to the power of one, it only takes one, right? Maybe you go to one event and you meet one person and they're like, oh, I'm part of this community. And you get right, and then you go to that community and you see what's going on. They're like, oh, and then you meet someone else. Like, so it can be so good, right, for the soul too, and just for your mental and emotional health and well-being to be around the right people, like-minded people, the people that are moving and shaking the way you are, and even, in different ways. So I think getting in a group, right, or groups, and just having the right people around you is so, so important. And it could, like, you will develop friendships and things that right, you'll learn things quicker. You'll hear about things before they are even known. There's so much value when you're getting around, these communities. And even if you can't find one, I say people start one. Start your own, right? And like start your own, and grab 3 or 4, entrepreneurs or friends that are like, you know what, let's start our own. And you never know, like that could create a ripple effect. There's so many, I mean, this is such a hot topic in the entrepreneurial, like in the online space, right? Like everyone I feel like has their own community. Why? Right? Because it's like, oh, it's a community for this, a community for that. So there's no shortage of communities. However, if you want to start your own, I'm all for that, because you never know what could be created inside of your community, what you want to create. From the physical standpoint, it is going back to self-care. And what I like to do, it's kind of like stacking habits, is could you find a community that, say you love to go hiking? Is it a networking hiking event, right? Or a walking event? Or maybe you're in tech and they have like a walking community, right? Like, so you can do like the physical within a community, or it doesn't have to relate to business at all, or it could, because also when you're exercising or saying you're taking Pilates class or whatever, you're also getting in front of new people that don't know who you are. That could also be prospecting. I mean, I don't want to have to make it all about business, but you can also, just relax and do, or you could be like, oh, well, hey, this is because people are like, oh, well, what do you do? Right? That question always comes up. What do you do? Where do you live? All the things. So it's like, oh, it's another chance for you to get out there and like to relax, but also network in like an unintentional way if you make it unintentional, or you could be intentional about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, those are all really great ideas, and totally I think it can be difficult for people to kind of like see all of the community that exists out there because it's kind of all virtual now, like for the most part. Although, communities will meet up in person, but like the basis of community often forms online these days, and so it can be more difficult to come across, and just find the right community for you. um, and so I think, as we're getting close to the end, to live Q&A, I'm wondering, um, I think something that some entrepreneurs can struggle with is celebrating their wins, their successes. So would love to hear you just talk a little bit about why that's important, and how entrepreneurs can celebrate their successes in a way that promotes like a positive, uh, you know, community culture.
Yeah. So celebration is my favorite. When people are in my sphere, in my world, they're like, Kelly celebrates all the time. My clients celebrate everything. Like celebration is so, so important. And it's what you appreciates. So you're from a mind body perspective, your mind and body and your subconscious doesn't know the difference between if you're celebrating yourself or if you're celebrating others. So if you're celebrating others and yourself, it's like, oh, it's a celebration. Like, what's going on? Right? Like, it's like, oh, celebrate. And so when you're in that celebratory state, it actually like opens up the channels for more, right? It's like gratitude. When you're grateful for things that you already have, well, it actually is like there's a physical shift in your body, like in your heart and brain coherence, all of that. So celebration is huge. And think about it. It's also about perspective and shifting your mindset. So if you're like, uh, say you look at your bank account and you don't like the number in your bank account, and you're like, oh my gosh, you go down the rabbit hole and you're like, oh, like you focus on that. But guess what? Abundance is everywhere. So if you were to go outside right now, whether it's sunny or not, the sky is abundant. There's abundance of clouds, or there's an abundance of sun. So when we shift and when we celebrate and when we are really grateful for the things that we already have, the air that we're breathing, it's like, oh, what else can I find? Because the brain and the mind is going to go wherever you direct it to go. So celebration is so, so powerful because some people only celebrate the big things, like the big accomplishments. But it's like celebration can be like, you know what? I sent one email today, or you know what? I showed up the way I didn't want to, but I showed up, right? Even if you're having a quote unquote like bad hour, I don't believe in bad days. I believe because we can shift in every moment. So celebration, if no one takes anything else from this this whole thing today, I would say celebrate even more. Like if you can double it, 10x it, and you're going to see like once you get into that state, you're going to be like, oh, because right when you celebrate, you're like, okay. And sometimes you may have to force your celebration, and then your body and your brain will just be like, okay, like I'm celebrating. So there is a physical, emotional, mental, research around this, and it's so critical because we just don't celebrate enough. And brain body wants to keep us safe, and so it's the brain and body's job to say, okay, where's the threat? Okay, am I in survival mode, or what's going to go wrong, or is the shoe going to drop, or is the other shoe going to drop, or we're always searching for the what ifs, right? So
Yeah.
it's a shift of being like, if this happens, like what if the shoe doesn't drop? What if,
Yeah.
right, like what if the most amazing thing happens, or what if I, what if, so we can play both sides. And so what celebration does, I don't know, for me, it gets me into that other side where it's not the default, right? If someone's in a default survival, mechanism. So
Hmm.
it's so important. And it can be, my non-negotiable is to celebrate once at least every day. Right. And I celebrate multiple times, but it's like, okay, what can you celebrate? And it's the same thing with gratitude. The first thing before I do anything is gratitude. Like, before I even open my eyes, like, what am I grateful for today? Oh, that I got another chance to wake up, that I'm breathing, that I'm still breathing, responding. So important. And I don't think as many people, right, celebrate as much, right, as, not that I should be doing it, but just incorporating that into their life.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's kind of like a way to, keep yourself going. And, even when you have that support system, having those moments to look back on is so important. So love the emphasis there. And when you do recognize, kind of like acknowledge those moments, they become kind of more significant. I think that's great. So to close us out before live Q&A, I wanted to see kind of like what your thoughts are in terms of reflection and kind of like taking a look at the support system that you've built for yourself, kind of like once you get there and, evaluating, where you may need more support, how it might, your support system might need to evolve going forward. Can you talk about like what that process might look like for entrepreneurs?
Yeah. So I would say whoever's watching and listening is to assess where you are right now and what is it that you need. Everyone needs something, right? Is it more clients? Is it more, maybe it's more communication, maybe it's a coach, maybe it's mentorship, maybe it's another community. And so different points. And I think the way you can recognize it is, where do you feel like capped, like you're hitting a level, right? And if what would make sense to what would make sense for your next move, right? So some people, it's like, you know what, I really know I need to get into a community, or I really know I need to touch base with two people a day, or I really know that I need a mentor or I need a coach. Um, and not need, no one needs anything, but like it will optimize your results and your movements. So it's assessing where you're at. And sometimes we don't know. Like sometimes you're like, oh, I don't know, but I know I need something. And what I would say for those people in that bucket is just to make a move, right? Like just decide, like, cause you'll know, right? If you're like, okay, well, maybe I need a community, I'll go find one online or in person. Go and take that action and see how you feel, right? Because it's going to lead to it may lead to something else. So, but how I assess also for like me personally, it's like, okay, what do I desire? Like, what's my next move? And even when we talk about like scaling a business, well, there's certain team members that you need, right? In certain aspects of the business. So it's like, okay, where do I need to leverage tasks out? Where do I get to have another mentor for this? Because we're always going to be working on different things in different seasons. So it's going to look different for everybody. I would just say, again, make the time and the space for yourself. And even if you're not 100% crystal clear, it's just take a movement towards one, right? Because when you just move towards and take one action, then it's going to lead to something else. And you can either course correct or you can go in even deeper. So that's like the really simple strategy, because sometimes I know, like, I think I need a community, but I actually need a coach. Or sometimes it's like, well, I need a mentor, but actually right now I need two more people on my team. So it just depends. And I want everyone to really know and trust that you can never make the wrong move, right? It may seem like the wrong move in the moment. However, I want everyone to think about like your internal GPS. If you make a left turn, but you were supposed to make a right turn, you're eventually going to get to the right turn. You're eventually all going to get to the final destination, or the destination you're getting to, say, that quarter or that year. but really trusting in yourself to make that next move and knowing that you're going to be guided by the next right move. It's kind of like the domino effect, right? When we push the domino, it's going to go, okay, it's going to kind of have a domino effect of having everything else, all the other dominoes fall down. So just always trust and believe, okay, GPS, I might make a left here, then I'll make a right, but everything that you need, you're always being guided. And even if you make the left turn, you're going to learn something from that. So
Yeah.
it's not like, oh, that was the wrong turn. I learned something from that. And now I'm going to go make the right turn. So just always think about that because, some people like they put so much pressure on like, what's the next move for me? It's like, just make the move, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's so important, recognizing like how it can be so easy sometimes to, overthink those tough decisions. But yeah, taking a step forward will, open you up to kind of making the next choice. And so I love this idea of just, one step at a time. Kelly, this has been such an awesome conversation. We do have a little bit of time for live Q&A. So if you are in the audience and you have a question for Kelly, please drop it in that Q&A function at the bottom. And so we have someone here, I think they're kind of asking about, when we were talking about like, hiring interns, that kind of like support for yourself and your business. And this person is, I think, asking like, uh, what is kind of like the breadth of possibility for interns, in terms of the support that they can provide to a business, I guess, as opposed to, maybe just a regular employee or a contractor.
Oh yeah, I think interns are critical. I think people are totally looking for interns are always needed for businesses in every area. I think. I mean, the entrepreneurs that I'm around and even the communities, they're always looking for help and they're always looking for interns. So it's absolutely critical, whatever you do, from website design to AI to even if you don't think that there could be an internship for you or help or support, I feel like entrepreneurs are always looking for support, especially social media, anything really. So whatever you feel like you can give or you're good at or your zone of genius is, I say shoot your shot. And I think an entrepreneur and a company are always looking for like good people, good help. It's always, I think it's always looked for in my world anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. We have another question here. How do you find the right mentor for your business? I know we've shared a couple resources in the chat, but any just thoughts there in terms of best practices?
Yeah, I always say, look to where you want to be and align right with your vision, your values, your mission, and does that person in embody either one or all of what you're looking for. Sometimes when I'm looking for a mentor or coach, it's like, okay, do I want to be where they are, or can they help? Do I know if they can help me? And so sometimes it'll be a conversation. Like I won't know sometimes until I have a conversation, or maybe I'm stalking them on social media, or there's a referral, right? And this is why getting in communities and around people, they might know, right, that person, or they may not know. But it's really, I think, getting curious of like, what do you need, right? Looking at, and even if you don't have your vision, your mission, your values, define them. I think it's a really good thing to have. Like it's a non-negotiable in my world, but getting clear of like what's the next step and who is that person that could help you and guide you. And that could be anyone. They could have everything or they could have the one piece that you need. Having a conversation if you can with them, and just kind of tuning in, right? And sometimes in communities there will be talks, or there will, that community might know that person, or so it's always good to kind of ask about that person if you have the communities or the outreach. But I would say those are just a few of the things. And then also knowing for yourself, how long do you want to be in mentorship, right? Do you want to just and that's another conversation to have with the mentor, but is it 3 months, is it 9 months, is it a year, right? So that also depends on that relationship and if the person has the time or, if how long you want to be mentored.
Yeah, absolutely. That's super helpful. Awesome. I think we have time for one more. And I think we can close out. When entrepreneurs are kind of facing challenges or setbacks, what are some ways that they can kind of lean on different support systems, whether it's a community, a mentor, a coach, or even just other peers, other entrepreneurs.
Yeah. Everyone goes through it. I would say ask for what you need. Uh, it is so important to just ask. Like, even if you don't know what you need, just talking it out with someone that you trust, that is so, so critical. So finding that support system, but really because everyone goes through dips, right? It's life. There's seasons of life. So there are going to be times when it doesn't feel great, right? And you're like, I don't even know what I can celebrate. So there are going to be dips, there are going to be tough times. And it's like, okay, what do you do in that? Do you stay in that? Or do you go talk to someone? Or do you go get into your communities, right? Whatever, but it's making the move, right? To just get out and actually be proactive about it. So yeah, I would just say it's always talking to someone always helps. And then getting out, like whether it's virtual, in person, getting to an event. And you'll see your energy will definitely shift, even if it's not the right community or the right person or the right, at least you're like chipping away at it. But
Totally.
everyone needs support. No one can do it alone. And you go faster with support as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. Kelly, this has been such an incredible conversation. If you had just one key takeaway or piece of wisdom that you wanted to leave with the audience, what would that be?
Don't be afraid to ask.
Awesome. Love it. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak to the community and share these insights. And on behalf of the NASDAQ Entrepreneurial Center and everyone here today, we're so thankful that you joined us.
I am so thankful for you having me. So thank you so much.
Awesome. And to our audience, we'd love for you to join us for upcoming webinars, which you can view using those links that are going to be posted in the chat. And thank you all so much for joining us today. We look forward to welcoming you back online with us soon.